haven't seen usage, you were really sick, and couldn't shake my hand. So, that was at the, electronic, internet services workshop.
How are you? This is supposed to be. Yeah. No, you said that. I'm not, I'm working that.
You guys.
So,
get that.
We're lying. Even though. That's been down. Yeah, and I always. Yeah. You're supposed to be that one point something. No, right. That's one of the reasons I mean.
Talk about consolidated planning
these very, big businesses that want to hire graduates from this program. We ask them what skills they expect for, employees that they want to hire into entry-level positions. They gave us that information. They helped us develop the curriculum, and in return, we asked them to commit to hiring at least each company at least one graduate from this program to a full-time benefits eligible position that pays $40,000 a year. It comes with health insurance, comes with 401k, all the good stuff that kids that graduate high school they typically think about. But also with we also made very sure that we want to have positions that allow growth within the organization. So those are not positions where you're stuck at, but those are positions where you start your career and you move on and you move up the ladder. Now, really, what I'm asking, or what I'm here for to ask, yes.
So a lot of folks in our community have to work shift work, right? And so they're not able to come to these evening programs. Are you anticipating doing something earlier in the day as this grows so that it's more accessible to folks?
Yes, so it is a pilot this year, so we have 2 cohorts, one for each program. We're looking for 20 cohort members in each group. As this grows, we're envisioning running multiple cohorts simultaneously, different times a day, different focus areas in terms of there might be some for students, like as a career development aspect or piece and like an AP credit type. I mean, that's not fully thought out yet and not up and running, but that's something we're discussing. We are looking for cohorts that target specifically folks that were incarcerated and they need those second chance opportunity and just a little more help, get their feet on the ground, get their foot in the door at a business and start running and building their life. That's all in the future, but right now we have funding for the first year. We're recruiting right now for 3 more weeks and we'll interview applicants in the first week of October. And again, the flyers are out there, they're back here. There are QR codes on the back that will direct you to the website with the application form. The applications are free, the program is free. I welcome everyone to share this information with the community members that you think could benefit most from this. And I really think it's going to still hope and make change happen and elevate the community. So I appreciate the time. And I'll stick around. If I'll have questions later on. To find me, I'll be enjoying some of the discussions that I had a little bit of.
All right, a few weeks ago, maybe, I met with the Wichita Documenters, and if you've seen them out, taking notes from all the meetings we have and trying to solve the challenge of just all the meetings that we have as a government and various levels of government, trying to get that documented and in place for people to see everything we're talking about. So when we had our meeting, I was like, there's a September breakfast for our city manager and park superintendent to be at. And they said they would be here, so I want to welcome up folks from the Wichita Documenters.
Hello, I won't take very long. My name is Debbie Haslam, and I am the project coordinator for a project director for Wichita Documenters. We are a brand new initiative. We launched in May and started documenting government meetings in May. So what we do is I train and pay people to go into government meetings, local government meetings, and just take notes. And then we publish those notes. We have well, it's not official yet, so it's official to you today. We have launched a website, wichitadocumenters.org, that's simple, where every single one of the notes that we have taken are hopefully easy to see and easy to find, listed by different organizations. So you can click on City Council, and then you see all of the different notes that we have taken from City Council meetings, or District 1 meetings, or District 2, etc. If you're interested in maybe joining us and going to these meetings, taking notes, and actually getting paid for it, you pay $16 an hour for the meeting time itself, plus half of that time added on to $6. So So if it's a 2-hour meeting, you get paid $16 an hour for 3 hours for your work, because you have to like edit the notes and get them submitted, and it takes a little time. So if you have questions, like I said, you can catch me at this meeting. I have little bookmarks that tell a little bit more about documenters if you're interested in that. But yeah, look for us. They're going to be wearing tags like this. We're easy to spot. And we just really want to get the community more aware of what's going on in meetings and make it easier for you to just go to one place to find what you're looking for.
Who sponsors this? Who's paying for all that? That's a lot of money.
We are funded by the Wichita Foundation. And the Wichita Foundation found the idea of documenters when Courtney Bankston was at a conference in Chicago. It started in Chicago. We are supported in a lot of ways through City Bureau in Chicago. There are 19 current documentary programs around the country. We are one of the newest. There's 4 more being established as we speak, and he said that he's hoping to have those 4 ready and up and running by the end of this year. So it's really growing. Cities around the country are recognizing the value of being able to give this kind of information to the community. So yeah. All right, well, like I said, look for the yellow badges. Oh, yes.
I'm signed up, I'm a documenter,
Yes.
and I think it's a very fantastic program, it's very exciting.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, she's been through the training. It's a 2-hour training, not a lot of time commitment. If you want to know what it's like, you can ask Holly later. She'll be able to tell you that as well. So, all right, well, thank you.
Right, so Wichita Documenter, is there the daunting task when you think about not just our council meetings, but our district advisory board meetings, our regular District 1 breakfast. The fact that we have now 22 citizen advisory boards, all of those meetings, all of that information to get out. We don't make appointments to each one of those boards. Mayor makes, I think, appointments to some that we do not. It's just a lot of information to get out there. And with that information, one of my favorite folks over at City Hall, Dante Martin, started off as a CSR and is now an assistant city manager. I won't steal all his thunder. But I always like to invite him out. But he'll talk about kind of what he's doing and a lot of the crime prevention efforts that the city does. A lot of times we just think about that as just law enforcement, but it's really everything that we do, a lot of multiple partner efforts that we have. So Dante will be talking about that, and then bring up Reggie as well, talking about more about Park and Rec and youth football, because there's been a lot of questions about that, so. Dante.
You, council member, my pleasure to be here with you again this morning. I'm always happy when Councilman Johnson has come out, because as I look around the room and I see people that I know very well and have known a long time, I feel like I grew up and was a chance to come back home and talk about all the great things that are going on, not only in our city and our organization, but in this community. A couple of things I want to touch on in addition to what Councilmember Johnson mentioned. There's a handout on the table there that highlights a couple of items that are going to the city council this week. I wanted to touch on them because I've been involved in each of those projects and maybe provide a little bit more information with those. A couple of years ago, the city council, under Mayor Whipple, adopted a policy related to ethics. At that time, there was a number of issues or concerns related to the ethics of not only our elected officials, but also our appointed board of commission members. And so the council at that time adopted the policy to establish ethics for the appointed or elected groups. Over the past couple of years, the city of Wichita has worked closely with the Wichita State Public Policy Management Center to develop policy and practices related to the work of that board. One of the things that came out of that work is a desire to take or elevate what had been initiated as a policy to make it an ordinance. Ordinances are binding, policy there's more discretion. So one of the items that's going to be presented to the city council this week is an ordinance that codifies the work of the Ethics Advisory Board, which will become the Ethics Board, and also addresses a few gaps or deficiencies we recognize in that initial policy. So something that's may be of interest to you as we seek to hold not only our elected officials accountable, but our board of commission appointed accountable. Just wanted to highlight that. Another item that I wanted to highlight, involves a project that I've been working on along with, Assistant County Manager Rusty Leeds for close to 9 months now. Many of you may recall the unfortunate apartment fire that occurred in October of 2023. And during that apartment fire, unfortunately, we lost one of our neighbors. And so coming out of that, the city and the county wanted to collaborate, partner, work together to figure out how we can make system improvements that hopefully prevent or avoid those sorts of incidents happening as we go forward. In December of 2023, Sheriff Easter, who was then the chair of the 911 Communications Advisory Board, the board took action to recommend that the county commission and city council hire an objective third party to review the system. And when I say system, everything that occurs from the point of call is made to 911 through the follow-up by our first responder. So through that process, we selected Jensen Hughes. Jensen Hughes put together a team that had a wealth of depth of experience in not only reviewing 911 operations, but also reviewing the operations of first responders. They've been doing this work since June of this year. 2 site visits have occurred this past summer. Jensen Hughes has met with the first responders who actually responded to that incident, as well as the leadership of our fire department. In addition to that, has met with the 911 staff that was involved in the incident, but also taking a holistic view, a systematic view of how we provide public safety service in this community. So the hope is that we'll have a report coming forward September, October, within the next 60 days that not only speaks to the incident, but also speaks to the system. As we go forward, what can we do to improve public safety in our community? So very excited to be, it's unfortunate to have that sort of project, but excited to be involved in the project that's going to improve and make our community safer. A couple other things that I want to touch on before I introduce Reggie. One of the challenges we faced as a community is access to healthy foods. And the dynamics in many of our communities have changed as grocery stores have removed themselves from our inner cities and kind of relocated and challenges access to access healthy foods, to go to grocery stores that may not be convenient, may not be in our community. We recognize the need for our communities to have access to healthy foods. And so one of the challenges the city council has taken on over the past couple of years is how do we increase that access? We work closely with the Food Trust, who has been involved nationwide in developing healthy corner store programs. And we've also engaged new venture advisors in the work. These are people who have done the work. So we're not reinventing the wheel. We work with the over the past year, 18 months, we studied the issue, what areas in our community have the most challenges as it relates to accessing healthy foods. I'm pleased to say that we're close to bringing forward a program and a recommendation to the mayor and city council in the coming weeks that will increase access to healthy foods in low access communities. Working closely once again with Wichita State University, it's Community Engagement Institute. We're looking at a model where we're going to partner with existing corner stores and through strategies, encourage and help incentivize the access or increasing access to healthy foods within existing brick and mortar stores. If you will. As many as you know, I grew up in this neighborhood. You go to a convenience store, you can find things that aren't healthy for you. Finding access to produce, meats, that's a different conversation. And so that's the one of the issues we're attempting to address. So glad to be involved in that project. Keep your eyes open, keep your ears open. Something should be coming soon. Along that same note, as I think about community partnerships and how we work not only with Wichita State and Community Engagement Institute, but how we work with our community partners to address community issues. Coming through the pandemic, we recognized we saw an increase in crime within our communities. Unfortunately, specific or especially crime among our young people, youth violence. And so, once again, the mayor and city council several years ago that this is something that we want to address. This is something that we need to get a handle on. Recognizing that there are many strategies. How can we supplement and support the efforts of our police department? So at that time, we engaged Pure Violence Global in studying the issue and developing a strategy around interrupting violence in our community. Pure Violence has a reputation not only nationally, but internationally of developing intervention type programs that have achieved desired results. Over the course of the last year, we have partnered with Community Engagement Institute of Wichita State, but also Destination Innovation, a community group that was already doing similar or related work in this very community. And so we put together a team that's up and running. Pure Violence was on site a week, 2 weeks ago, I think it was, Councilmember Johnson, conducting training in this very room. We've already started to see the benefits of that work. Here report out that around the same time this training was going on, there was an incident that spilled out to one of our local. And it was an incident that could very easily have escalated to a more violent situation. Using strategies employed by Pure Violence, learned during the training, Destination Innovation was able to intervene and help de-escalate that situation. So we see value. As I look at Twyla, and I know Twyla, you and I have had a lot of different opinions about the importance of performance measurement. How do we evaluate? So I wanted to make a point of sharing as we have these initiatives, these pilot type programs, we follow it up with an evaluation. So as we introduce programs, we hope to achieve certain goals and outcomes. After the pilot ends, we need to go back and see, did we achieve what we hoped to achieve? What can we do different? And so each of those programs I just mentioned does have an evaluation. I'm sure you would be pleased to hear that.
Yes, very, thank you.
Lastly, Councilman Johnson mentioned some recent work that we've done around crime prevention. When I say we too, sorry, working closely with the city manager, we realized that the community resident survey spoke to issues that were high importance for low quality. Crime prevention, crime reduction was one of the five, so it became a priority for our organization. But as we attempted to address that issue or to inform the community about that issue, we also needed to take a step back and look and say, what programs do we have as an organization that have an impact on crime? Not only that, have an evidence-based impact on crime. So research has shown that these strategies can reduce crime. And so the city manager tasked me with putting a staff team together, developing a report that kind of surveys the organization and identifies what are those evidence-based programs that we have running that have been shown to impact crime. And so through that work, we identified roughly 90 or 100 some odd programs that you may not traditionally think about as having an impact on crime. And Reggie will talk about some park programs, but we recognize that crime prevention, crime reduction really has three components. There's the prevention piece. What can we do before crime occurs? So youth programs, library programs, increasing literacy, increasing access, all these things that have shown that have an impact on crime. Realizing that despite our best efforts, crime is going to occur, what can we do to intervene skillfully? So this is largely some of the work you'll see in the police department. It's also the work of violence interrupter type programs. So what can we do when crime occurs to intervene? And then also realizing crime will occur. What can we do when our neighbors who have been involved in crime, affected by crime, impacted by crime, to help rehabilitate? And so there we're talking about strategies aimed at addressing factors that lead to violence. We're talking about addressing factors that lead to substance use and abuse. So a wide range of programs that we have going. As an organization, and I'll be the first to say, we don't do a good enough job of telling our stories. We don't do a good enough job of letting people know what programs, what services are available. That's something that we need to do better. So this type of work really becomes the first step because it was eye-opening to me. I've worked for the city of Wichita close to 25 years. So as I gathered these programs, I'm like, wow, it's impressive all of the things that Reggie's doing and all the stuff that Jamie Nix has going on at the library. I spent 12 years in court, so I was aware, not in the court system, working for them. So I had an awareness of what they were doing, but it was great to pull together this comprehensive document and see how we can work better as an organization in partnering with the community. So with that being said, and I'm open to any questions, but I know that Reggie's going to talk about youth football. He's also going to talk about some strategies that Park has employed that help address crime and youth violence.
Okay, real quick question. Yes. With this healthy food access program, will you have any input of making sure that it's affordable?
Yes, and then thank you for asking that question. So as we've worked with the food trust, that's key. And so oftentimes we make these small amounts of healthy food at a price that's not affordable in local stores. And so it's how do you not only increase access availability, but at a price that people can afford. program hasn't been finalized, but I'm encouraged that as we're using ARPA funding for this, because what we've seen is through the pandemic, a negative impact of less of an access or access to groups. One of the things we're talking about is in those low access communities, how can we help not only increase availability, but that's a key part of the program.
And then to maintain it, that it won't just come and then all of a sudden it's gone.
Absolutely, sustainability, absolutely.
So we talk about a lot with crime prevention. We rarely talk about the nature of crime and criminality itself. What is being done to stop criminalizing poverty? So one of the issues that we have when we is looking for fines, fees, and incarceration. Is there any work that's actually being done for systemic justice in decriminalizing poverty, reducing the amount of people policing, and actually creating an environment where people aren't terrorized for being poor?
So if I could, and thank you for the question. As I mentioned, I spent 12 years working on the court system, 7 years ago in the court administration. And as you asked the question, it took me back to when I think I first met Councilmember Johnson, maybe I'm gonna tell my age, I'm gonna tell your age. I think I met Councilmember Johnson in this very room 12, 13 years ago. And the discussion we were having at that time is the impact driver's license suspensions have on people. And that residents, our neighbors who struggle to not only pay the citation, but the reinstatement fees that stack up, how that can affect the rest of your life. I remember soon after that also meeting with Sunflower and hearing firsthand from people I grew up with, my neighbors, talking about the impact not having the license had on them, not being able to go to work, not being able to take their kids to school, all of these things. And so I'm very proud of work that's been done over the course of the past decade to address that very issue. Locally, we took a look at what programs we have available to help residents that have suspended driver's license get reinstated. Realizing that we were limited by state statute. State statute requires that at that time, if you do not pay a traffic citation, your license must be suspended. There's no discretion, must be suspended. So we worked closely with the state over the past several years to identify a program that address the community members, our residents, our neighbors that are most affected by this. So I received a citation. I can't afford to pay the citation. I certainly can't afford to pay these reinstatement fees. What can we do? And so what the state has allowed is our local judges to waive those reinstatement fees, those fines, if a person is it could create a hardship on their life. And we now have discretion. Our judges have discretion. In addition to that, to support that, we've created a Wichita Area Reclamation Program where staff works closely with residents who are affected, who are going through the situation, to not only help them understand a path towards reinstatement in our group, but realizing in our community, you may also be in a similar situation in Sedgwick County, Derby, Andover. And so we're working with our community partners to help navigate and help with reinstatement. So that's one program. That's one thing that we're doing as a court system. Many more things are going, but that's probably what I'm best for us to discuss.
2 questions, if I could. Back to the food, corner food trucks. The food trucks you were talking about, or the corner stores. It's usually, or what I've seen so far is it's during the daytime. What about scheduling evening times for working poor?
So, and maybe it's an idea, Councilman Johnson, if you will, wants to get the program up and running, if it's approved, to have CEI in our community partners, Mount talks about it. So what we've, for example, in this neighborhood, we've worked closely for the past year, 18 months with Mr. and Please on 21st Street near 135. And we heard firsthand from them what they offer and what are the challenges to doing exactly where, how do we extend hours? How do we extend shelf space for healthy foods? I can't stand here today and tell you I have the answers, but I can tell you that we're working with community partners who are informed, who have the same concerns that you have, and hope to address, develop a program that addresses the issues. One last question, and then I'll introduce Reggie.
What about the Dollar, is it Dollar General there at 21st and I-135 across the street? They brought in, they remodeled, brought in new fresh groceries, and
And thank you
They
for that.
work with the city?
As we developed that program, and I remember when I first drove down 21st Street and saw Dollar General Marketplace, I just wasn't aware it was coming. I think I emailed or texted Councilman Johnson that same day, hey, what's this? This could potentially be a game changer. So I'm not very familiar with its business model. Keep in mind, not only are we focused on this community, but we're focused on other low access communities throughout the city. But the strategy that's being developed is working with any partner that's interested in providing free access to healthy food at an affordable cost. So whether that be Dollar General Marketplace, whether it be Mr. Thieves, whether it be Mart over on 32nd Street, any community partner that wants to be engaged in this conversation with us.
Are they cooperative with, reasonable prices?
Very early on in the program, we haven't gotten to the point of stocking shelves and pricing.
Okay, and then on the judges, you were talking. But then you talked and it made me think more a couple.
Please, I'm just joking.
One more, please. So back to the judges and working the license, getting licenses reinstated. How do the judge find out if it's a hardship for someone?
So
What's that process?
we've created an office at City Hall, it's on third floor City Hall. So a person whose license is suspended, they have a traffic citation. They tell staff, hey, I want to discuss, what are the options? How do I get my license? And so it's a case management approach.
Okay.
So working closely with that person to understand their situation, helping them build their case, and then presenting that case.
Got it. Thank you.
Great question. Sorry for giving you a hard time.
No, thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. So glad to be here. Want to introduce.
I wanted to add one thing. If anybody's on Facebook, make friends with Olitha Falscadeau, our state senator. She posts about this topic, the driver's license, because she helped pass that bill. She led that bill in the state senate. So she posts about all the workshops that they do. The last one was August 24th, from what I can see, but they do them every so often. So that would be, you'll find out about it on her page.
Thank you, Laura. I really appreciate that. Let me introduce Reggie. So, and thank you for the reminder. Reggie came to the city of Wichita a little less than 7 years ago, around 7 years ago. It's been my pleasure to work with him. He comes to us from Texas. And so I'm glad that we stole one. He's done a really good job for our organization, but also in our community. One of the things I'm most proud of, if you didn't know, if I hadn't told you he was from Texas, you would think that he had been part of our community for that day. So I really respect and appreciate the work that Reggie's doing and glad to introduce him.
Glad to be here. I know Dante talked a little bit about some of the things that we're doing in the community as violence interrupters. One of the things we're proud about this year is that once I got here, one of the things that we want to focus on is some of the young men that we have and the young people in our youth football program. So Dr. Wilpolite and I had started some conversation with Councilman Johnson on how can we work together with the school district to be able to offer program for young people to be successful not only in football. So as part of that, this year, we're kicking off a partnership with the school district where we're actually aligning our youth football program with students that these kids will have to be going to attend once they get into high school. So this year, we're starting off with them actually playing at the high school fields. Today is the first weekend of opening up the football program with that partnership. And starting next year, our 7th and 8th grade program will actually be coached by USD 259. So the school district has taken on that commitment to actually pay the coaches to work with those young people who traditionally have had volunteer. All of the programs below that are actually aligned to be zoned to where the schools they will actually go in high school. The two things that go along with that is it gives those young people the opportunity to see what it looks like to actually get prepared, get into high school and play sports. And it's not a surprise to them on what the academic requirements are and what's required for them to actually be eligible when they get to high school. So it's one of the challenges that we had that youth football didn't have a tie into the school year to keep those young people behaving the way that we want them to behave, make sure they are doing the things they need to do academically to be prepared to in high school. And we lose a lot of young people who have a challenge to play at the next level just because they're not prepared to do so. So this partnership, we're excited about being able to do that and tie into how we can make young people be successful not only on the football field, but also in life in the class. So that's just kind of a brief overview of that. I also have some information over on the table there that comes to kids, what that transition looks like going into this year, going into next year as well. If you guys would take one of those and answer any questions about that. If you guys have any questions. And on the violence interrupter side, I'm sorry, go ahead. Lynn.
Oh, with the football thing, so it changed the dynamic of how they have done it here, right?
Did change something from what they traditionally do.
How did that go over?
So we've had some good feedback from it and some that have some concerns with it. And one of the concerns that was expressed was that we're not allowing some of those young people who traditionally play with organizations in the community. But when we looked at the overall picture of where kids are playing and where they live in the community, that dynamic has already changed. So what we ran into is that we had young people who were traveling to other areas just to go to programs that may have had better records. So we didn't have a good foundation where kids were getting in, learning the sport, having an opportunity to grow, and being in their actual community where they live because they're moving around. We have Councilman Johnson playing in the program growing up here, you know what it looked like when he was here. And we would have young people changing from organization to organization every year. So there wasn't any consistency for those young people to build those relationships and focus on getting a good foundation to build on learning the sport. It's also having some buy-in to the community where they live. So hopefully this will take us back to the original intent that we had from the program, but it's kind of deviated from the beginning.
So I see a lot of these young players doing fundraising all the time. Is that gonna end? Because it looks like that's a lot of responsibility on the coach as well. Is that gonna end now with this 259 support with coaching, or is it still gonna be a challenge for these?
It still will have some academic component to it, but one of the good things about the partnership is we're able to leverage some of those things that the school district have. We're working with some of the vendors that they have with equipment, for the uniforms and things like that. So the price that they may have traditionally paid as an individual organization, now that price is going to be reduced quite a bit with being able to work through some of those partnerships, those co-ops that are in place for some of those vendors. So it will be a relief on some of those. A lot of people don't realize is that the way the organizations are set up now, it's the city organized the leagues, but the teams themselves are owned by the individuals in the community. They operate those. So when we're realigning in this, it gives us an opportunity to have more flexibility where we can leverage some of the resources that we have in the community to make them less of an impact on the families as they register for the program. So a young person registering our football program pays $55 a week. And that's pretty much aligns with what USD 259 charge for some of the extracurricular activities that they do as well. And we're trying to see how we can help that dollar go a whole lot further.
Are there scholarships for those families that can't even come up with $55?
We do have some opportunities. I know Councilman Johnson is part of what he does, not only just with football, but even with our swimming pools and things that are there. He goes out and looks for opportunities to get people to help support those. So if a young person comes and said that they just can't afford it, we look for ways to help support.
You mentioned an academic component. Are you offering tutoring, checking grades? How are you improving that side for an athlete?
And that's a good thing about it with us partnering with the school district now. Of course, as a city, we don't have access to the students' grades. So with us partnering with the school district and them being able to actually get involved at the school level, they're able to look at and see how is this person's progress in academics in school, being able to give them the support that they need. And specifically with those 7th and 8th graders now, the coaches that are there working with will be able to have access to that because they're students USD 259. We didn't have that access. We would work with parents and say this is what we're looking for with it, but we can't require them to show us grades or anything that we have to participate in the program with structure.
So with playing with the school district, does that require them to follow education guidelines? Or is that just the high school players?
It's just a high school player to have the CASA guidelines that's with it. And part of what we do, we have our youth football guidelines that we have. We try to align those as close as we can with those CASA guidelines so they have a good foundation of what they can look like when it's going to go into the high school year. So it's not a surprise.
So does this start with junior high school?
Yes. So this year, it starts next year where the coaches will be in the 7th and 8th grade. This year, we're just having access to the field for them to actually play. So we want to have an opportunity for young people who may have already invested in things that they need for this year, so it wouldn't be a hardship for them to give them a year to transition over to next year.
Okay, so would this include the magnet schools?
It's including just the not sure the magnet school, we're working with all of the high schools where they actually zone for those kids to be in the community.
We shift gears just a little bit. No one has heard of what you're doing with Colvin. So
So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. As part of what Dante talked about is with the violence interrupters, and he mentioned that's something that we need to do a better job with as a city is ensuring what resources we actually have available for the community. One of the things that you referred to is Colvin Elementary Public School that we have in here. And we offer a pre-after school and before school program that's there for any young person that attends the school that's there at Colvin. And they're able to come in early in the morning, stay after school, so they have a safe place where they can actually be with those parents who are working. The kids have some supervision is there. As part of that, we tie into the academic day to do some additional tutoring, things that they have there on site. We also have opportunity for some social activities where we have groups that come in and do things like scouts and teaching them some good core values and things that they need to be successful in life. And we work real closely with the school district there, and that's funded through our housing department. But we're able to get that grant funding where a young person doesn't have to pay that too. There's a lot of other things that we do in the community that may not be aware of. When we talk about the food deserts, we actually partner with Salvation Army, where we have 3 of our Parks and Rec community facilities that we have food pantries that we actually give out fresh food in the community for people to pick up. And that's that here at Fairmont, that's here in the community, Goldenrod, as well as Colton. So we have information about that as well.
and would you share where you'd like to go with this after-school program, please?
So we would love to expand it. Colvin has been something that's been in place for some years now. We would love to be able to offer something here in the 67218 area that's similar to that for young people to have an opportunity to participate in, as well as up in the Evergreen community there as well. So that's kind of our vision, being expanded to some other sites as well. So our research with crime prevention, that 3 to 7 time frame, the young person engaged in something positive that keeps them in a good environment, it reduces crimes over 50% for that age demographic. So having opportunities for them to get into something that's positive, constructive, and giving them some good positive role models makes an impact.
Is there a possibility of expanding things like this to other sports like basketball, baseball, track, soccer, things like that? Or just...
Yes, so this is kind of our pilot, what we're doing as part of that partnership as well. One of the things that we want to do is really leverage our resources that we have. So USD 259 has some challenges with, they don't have enough baseball fields that they use for their baseball league. So they use off Thurman over at McAdams Park for some of their games. They use Westside Athletic Field for some of their games as well. The tennis tournaments that they're hosting some of those down at Park Tennis Center. So we're looking at ways that we can expand it into other sports. And the good thing about when we finish the renovations at our Brewer Community Center, it gives us an opportunity to start looking at some of those other things that we can do as well because we have the space to do.
Can you say again where the Salvation Army distribution is at the 3 schools? I know Colvin, where else?
Colvin, right here at Fairmont, that's here. And then we also have Goldenrod, our community center as well.
What was the third one?
Goldenrod.
Goldenrod.
Down near Linwood Rec Center. Community there, kind of South Central. Flyers and information that we can get out as well, we can share electronically with those sites.
Thank you.
So one of the things we try to pride ourselves on doing is looking at ways that we can leverage partnerships to make a greater impact in the community. We realize that we can't do everything in the community or in the silo. So we look for ways that we can expand those services, share our resources, to make sure we meet the needs of the community. So if you guys have ideas and things that you see as a need that's there, we're always open to seeing how we can bring it to the resources we have to make a big difference. Questions?
They pulled a fast one on me. He went first and then sat down, so he knew. All right, well, I always appreciate having Dante and Freddie here, as well as Larry Dennis coming back. Shout out to Larry, former director of McAdams Rec Center. Great presentation, a lot of good information today. I don't know if you all have questions about recent news items, but I do have a few updates for you. So our budget did pass last month. It passed 6-1. There were some changes that I wasn't necessarily happy about, but again, it did pass. One of those changes is to our dirt roads program. So as you know, former council had allocated $39 million to begin paving streets throughout the community, starting in low income areas and around schools. That money was reallocated. It can be for dirt road, but we have to petition for it now. So in those areas, we have to knock doors. I like knocking doors, so that's not the biggest deal, but again, a lot of work now has to happen on those dirt roads that are not programmed in and beginning to start now. So there's a few more happening in District 1 in the coming year. One of the ones I really cared about over there by St. Paul, it's at 16th Street between Grove and Pyatt. That dirt road I've been wanting to see paved since I got elected, because one person said it's been 40 years and that road is still dirt and elections don't matter. So it's gonna get paved next year. I'm excited about that. But that program will have to go out and actually petition now. And I believe we'll have to get 80% of the neighbors to say yes. It won't cost them. But it's the neighbors, it's not the property owner, which is good, it's the people who live there. But that's one change that happened. Going forward, I do want everybody to pay close attention to conversations the council is having about the deficit. We'll have a deficit next year, 3.6 million. We'll have work to do. I have been the first. I'm gonna keep saying that we need to raise our mill levy. Wichita has like the 4th lowest mill levy in this region at like 32.7 something. Paynesville is almost like 54. So, or 46, one of those. It's much higher than us. So as we think about that, for property owners, for every $100,000 in valuation, that's $11.50. That's one meal annually. So the cost of one pizza annually is us raising the mill levy one. The cost of 2 pizzas would be 2 meals. I'm not advocating above 2, but I am saying we need to do something, because we have to pay our people what they deserve, whether that's fire, police, SEIU union folk, transit, all of those people, we have to pay competitive wages. And if we keep doing that, at some point, the 75% of our budget that pays for our people, gotta make cuts. So at some point, we're gonna have to raise that mill levy. It's been 33 years. I'm 38. So the last time we raised the mill levy was the year before the greatest Super Bowl performance of all time, Michael Jackson. Wu-Tang was on the radio, the golden age of hip hop. We didn't have cell phones, but we had the vehicle cell phones, but the world has changed and our needs of our city have changed. And as you hear about some of the incredible things Parks is doing, the crime prevention work, we're gonna have to make an investment. Now, that vote would be next year. I'm out of office in 15 months. I'm telling you this now because you're gonna have to decide what type of city that we have as voters. And if we don't raise that mill levy, we're gonna have to make some real cuts. And honestly, most of those cuts tend to be the programs that we care about. So that's a conversation that I hope that you all continue to have that with your neighbors and then talk to us council members about that. So it's gonna be important as we go forward. We're gonna start talking about next year's budget because of that deficit probably here in the next month or two. The city manager has said, so keep an eye out, make sure you stay engaged on that and let us know. But that did pass, go ahead.
Well, so on this $3.6 million deficit, and some folks have heard me say this before, but when it comes to transparency in the city budget, I went through the entire budget and looked at all the mission statements and vision statements. And the word transparent or transparency was only once. And I bring that up because when it comes to transparency, what I couldn't find in the budget is what the city spends on litigation and paying out lawsuits. You know, and is that millions of dollars? Is that hundreds of thousands? Is it tens of thousands? Like, we don't know, right? And so I would just, you know, I like transparency on that. Because if we're gonna engage in budgeting, but we have this, maybe it's a black hole, maybe it's a pinprick, but we don't know what it is. So, I mean, how can you help us with that? Or is it important to other folks in the room? Because it's real damn important to me.
I think, just continue to talk about it. I would say that the manager has talked about those things as well. As far as the litigation piece goes, that should be going through the Citizen Review Board. They have access to that. We have put out some numbers before, around the time. We got a lot of questions when we settled the Tench case about that. And we talked about those numbers, and I don't know where we posted that. I do know a few of us did share the numbers that were provided to us. That could be a regular report. I know the Citizen Review Board is going through some reorganization right now, but that's something I would say just keep talking about.
Well, and all of us here, I'd encourage all of us, you know, talk about within your communities or become city council, because it's distressing in my view.
I'm a little confused and skeptical by the discussion on the core services versus the so-called non-core services. And at the same time, the property tax versus the sales tax. And I'm not persuaded that there's a real issue there, but I'd like to hear what your thoughts on both of those are.
I'll give my definition. I think each council member gives core service definitions a little different. My definition of core services is law enforcement, fire, I would say transit and public works. It kind of gets into like SEIU, because we gotta have our roads done. That's water treatment plant, and sewer, public safety, fire, I think speak for themselves. And then transit, of course, to me is extremely important. It's not where it should be, but I think that's important. I would argue a little past that. Like, I think parks and libraries is core services. But I think some of my colleagues would say it's kind of stops there and everything else is a luxury. And property taxes versus sales tax. So our mill levy is our property tax. And then there's that 1% tax we have jointly with Sedgwick County. We split that 50-50. The 50% we get is called a localized sales tax. So if you're looking on our budget book, that's LST. We can only use that for roads, bridges, highways. So when you see us spending all this money on roads and you see LST, we have to, like, we can't move that somewhere else. Legally, we have to because of the agreement with the county. The conversation about sales tax, the county's conversation is different than the one I'd actually like to have. There are some people who want to use sales tax to pay for operations, which I think is bad. Because if we go into a recession, the sales tax collections will go down, we got to fire them or lay them off. If we use the money for capital investment, then we're building things like a pool center or community centers or fixing our pools, things like that, things that the community may want, building sidewalks, all of that. So if we have projects in there, that would be the way to go, kind of like Oklahoma City. And I think that's where we should go. I don't necessarily agree it should be all of our CIP. And I say that because, and I'm very transparent on this, when we talked about initially doing the Brewer Center or investing $2 million into the McAfee pool, there were people around this city saying that those people don't deserve that. That means they were gonna vote against that. And this community deserves it just as much. And if it's in the CIP and the council's voting on that, it's gonna happen more than likely. That means that every part of our city can benefit, rather than just saying, well, we shouldn't spend $10 million over here because they're gonna destroy it. And those things are not true. So my view of a sales tax would be, you know, there's an effort to do performing arts downtown. So maybe that's a piece of it. I think half of a 1 cent should go to what community wants, not just what we're saying. So if half of that cent is going to performing arts, then I think the community should pick whatever other projects go in that. So if it is, you know, we've been talking about doing a park master plan. If that's building a few more community centers, especially in lower income areas, I think that item should be there, especially if neighbors are saying that. If it's fixing and paving more sidewalks, I think that item should be in there because that's what the community wants. So it's not just, I'm going to pay this extra 1% for downtown. It actually benefits the entirety of the city. We haven't had that conversation yet, but every time it comes up, that's what I say. It should be one major project that we know is going to benefit us. Brand new performing arts would be amazing for Wichita, but also what else can our neighborhoods get in that? So the dialogue right now on the sales tax is between the capital investments and potentially operations. I think the operations piece may die because people see that's not good, especially if we hit a recession. But that's kind of where we're at on that.
When we're talking about the mill levy, I know that we have not raised it for, like you said, 35 years. You were a little boy then. The expenses our city has incurred go up every year.
Yep.
But we're not making that up at all by increasing that percent on property taxes. And the house that you're talking about that was $11 was $100,000 house. That is not my house.
So my house, we would pay $23.
Yeah, so I mean, for a lot of us, it's not even gonna be that much. But I also know that I can imagine that there are no other city council members who would vote for that besides you.
I don't know. I'm just gonna make it an issue, and I hope that everyone sees it.
Okay,
And if not, next year, I can guarantee if nobody else does, I'll make a motion to raise it. We'll see if it passes.
okay.
If not, then, you know, I gave it my best shot. But most importantly, I think just for citizen engagement is we gotta talk about it. Because at some point, especially with our young folks who leave, that say we don't make these investments and we don't have these things, or our seniors, especially in neighborhoods with terrible sidewalks, the state statute says you gotta fix it. You know, if we're not doing those things and taking care of our neighborhoods, we'll lose people. So to me, we should make those investments. So I'm gonna keep talking about it. We'll see what happens.
So don't just email you,
Old council.
the whole council, particularly the libertarians on it.
Along those lines as well, Councilman Johnson mentioned about some of the improvement that's being made here in District One. The Brewer Community Center is a big investment. That's the renovation to the pool that we actually did. We're doing some new scoreboard over at Barry Sanders Field that's coming in place, new lighting at the baseball diamond there as well. And also we go down the ground yesterday on doing improvements to the tennis court that's there. So you'll see that's going to be restructured as there. We'll have new surfacing that are there, 3 full courts that are there. And in a small area there, we envision at some point potentially being some pavilion or shade structures there in that area. So it's a lot that's going on in the community. Council Johnson has been real supportive of making sure that we put quality communities here for amenities for the community to enjoy.
Appreciate that, Reggie. You have to apologize to Dante, because he loves playing over there. Out of line right now. But on that point, you know, during the budget conversation, so some discussion around arts came up. And that's one thing I'm always gonna push. So if you see all of the new spaces, and I don't think we publicly shown what the Brewer Center is gonna look like, and I'm not, I want you all to be surprised at the same time. But the art that we are making sure is in these new spaces is incredible. And I think everybody's gonna be blown away by what the Brewer Center looks like when you walk in. Just seeing that, and I haven't even seen all the final products. I just saw what may happen, and it looks incredible. So the tennis courts will have some art elements to it. Honoring Coach Dowdy, if you knew him, I didn't even realize everything he had done when I knew him, because I met him as a tennis player, and he started telling me about being a Globetrotter and everything else he did. Great guy, but we're gonna be doing that there, and continuing to talk about art, but I'm always gonna fight for that 2% for the arts ordinance that we have. It was great when we did it. It just so happened to be that we were already spending about 1%, and that was kind of the push, so I said, hey, what about 2? And that 2% is actually gonna pay off. You know, we shouldn't have buildings that are just great for the architects in the room. It looks great. It's a nice symmetrical building, but what else can we do? We look at the Maya Angelou Library. Took a couple years, but we got that mural on there, and now it's just incredible. Wait till you see what else is coming.
Yeah.
I haven't told you that either. That's the
Can
look
we
at it.
talk about the art that's going into Maya Angelou? Can we talk about that yet? They said they need an RFP for the fabric.
We have not, I don't think we voted on that. So the RFP went out for some of that.
Yeah.
Architecturally, we had a presentation at DAB that looked at some of the vibrant colors that would be in there. Doing more of honoring Maya Angelou, actually expanding the space as well, building out the solarium area to the west side of the building. There's gonna be a cool sign that will be out front. Again, art, looking at that in colors, but those things are coming. We're also expanding. If you go by Rockwell Library right now, you see a large fence on the outside, on the north side of the building. We're expanding that. So Rockwell Library is gonna look awesome as well. Again, making these investments in our district and those things that matter like that. Great. I do want to add on to, when we look at football, we're working on a larger project over at Glendale Park. Try to get going hopefully by next year. You may have seen that in the community voice, but Glendale Park, Grove Park.
Oh, well,
And looking at trying to do something really awesome for our young people there, one space, multiple fields. And you'll hear more about that here pretty soon as well. Pretty excited about that. Probably sometime by next month or the month after, but that's a large project and we want to offer something to our young people. Again, it's more than just being an athlete. Growing up, I was an athlete, but we had a lot of mentors on our team that taught us how to have good hygiene and how to treat people and make sure you get your grades right. And, you know, if you don't have a certain GPA in high school or college, you want to be in the field and behaviors and all of that. All of that has to go into youth sports. We see that with League 42. And we'll be seeing that in more in youth football as well. So that's coming. Reggie talked about the Brewer Center. If you go by there, you'll see the fences up. I drive by there at least twice a week because I'm excited. It's happening. You can see the parking lot starting to take form. You see the foundation of the building. Again, if you haven't heard that, because I do see some new faces in here, that building's going from about 13,000 square feet to 37,000 square feet. It's going to be incredible. We'll keep the gym that we have in there, but we'll have a brand new gym as well. So you'll have 2 gyms in there. Full culinary kitchen. We all know Mayor Brewer loved to grill. And so in his honor, there'll be a culinary space in there as well. So any young person, we wanted that to be an opportunity center. So not just come in and have a great time, but also learn, be able to progress. If you learn how to do culinary arts, you get good at it. You know, that's something that you can turn into a business later on. And that's a space where we'll also be able to rent out. People like our favorite Miss Jody, you know, that's the space she could go use, or anybody else who's doing food kind of at home right now. That'd be a space they could call home, like we're doing at Boston Park with the Create campaign. So again, we have all of those things coming. I'm pretty sure somebody has a question about parking. Am I right?
no. It's not about parking, but that is an issue. Can you speak about these schools closings that they are talking about? Okay, Lee Overture.
Honestly, I can't. 259 kind of made those decisions. The first round, you know, that was a public conversation. In the second round, I kind of caught that with everybody else. I can definitely invite, well, in December, I intended to invite other electeds back because I messed up on that for last month. Melody's always been good about coming and explaining that. She kind of talked about it at the ministerial league, but I had to leave, so I didn't catch that. That's why I can't share that with you. But I'm happy to invite her to talk more about some of the thought process on that, what's going on, because I am concerned about Lee Overture being closed over there. So I do want to know more about that. Before I talk about parking, I do want to give one more update on the contamination site. I always say every month I'll talk to you about it. We are in the process, we being the city, working with the county and KDHE. There's an agreement for the money that was allocated in, that was $1.5 million allocated for screening and testing, and another $1 million if we can match it with $1 million. So we've been meeting pretty regularly, trying to make sure that we get that formulated, working with Sedgwick County, and then trying to find where we can get this other $1 million from so we can take advantage of that other $1 million. We are working hard on that. Chairman Beatty has been really helpful in that. That is our update. We have a meeting on Monday to see if we can find some, I guess, some final language on that. Our challenge was we wanted to see not only screening and testing, but treatment. Because it doesn't really help if we can tell you you have cancer if we can't do anything about it. So I think we got that resolved. We'll be working with the governor's office. When I say we, there's probably more in the county, but we're all talking. And then once we get all of that signed, all of our clinics are working together. They're at the table as well. Those are the smart folks. We just convene the meetings and listen to all the smart people talk. But I think they've worked out kind of how this whole thing is going to work testing wise. And then we'll have a marketing plan to make sure people know. So more so than the door to door that we've done, more so than, you know, Ruby Powers out doing surveys with UP. We're probably going to be doing everything from social media to geofencing to radio, to knocking doors, trying to do meetings within the neighborhoods, all of those things to let people know and then make sure people get tested. To me, the most important thing is that people actually get screened and they have an answer of whether or not they have cancer. That thing's been going on for more than 50 years now. And we finally are at a place where we can start trying to get some resolution, but that part we're working out. And then Union Pacific, I believe, should be having another open house pretty soon. I haven't talked to them in a while to kind of give the final plans on these devices. Again, I've said I really want those devices in the ground before I leave office, because until those devices are in the ground and turned on, we're not cleaning up any water. So we need to get those in there if possible.
The new homeless shelter,
Oh, man.
talk to us about that a little bit.
Okay, so the city council, I think that was Tuesday, gave the final 3 approvals to purchase the school from 259, rezone it, and move forward with the multi-agency center. As you all may remember last year when we had the emergency shelter on Opportunity Drive, that was a last minute thing. That was like our best option we had. Of course, wasn't the best option for community, but that was our option at the time. We were working towards this, the MAC. So the emergency shelter this year will be at Park Elementary. We're working as quick as we can to make sure those renovations happen and be ready for that. And then after the winter season, we'll continue those renovations, making that the full multi-agency center. We're hoping, I think by Thanksgiving, to have that shelter open, so hopefully we don't get too much cold weather for then, so those folks can go down there. And we've also talked about, we all saw the articles and stories about last year. We're gonna try to make sure that those types of things don't happen in this new space. Be very active about that. So that is coming. We have made those final approvals. I haven't heard anything on the environmental studies, but I'm pretty sure it sounded like Tuesday, we're good to go as long as we can get some of this construction going and get that open.
My question is that I went to a couple of meetings about homeless, and I asked them that they ever thought about sorting out the homeless people. Some people homeless because they want to be. They don't care. A lot of them is because of drugs. A lot of them because of mental health things. And a lot of them is just, they can't afford it. So when you lock all these people together, you're not really helping them. Because they still doing the same thing. So the one that don't care, they still gonna tear up and junk up the homeless shelter. But them that wants to do something, then they would need to have a place for them to try to help them get jobs and a place to stay.
So this is actually different than what you might be thinking. So the emergency shelter, yes, we want as many people as possible out of the cold into some space warm to have safety. There will be resources there though, but the final multi-agency center, it really is just that. We'll have a bunch of agencies in there.
Okay.
So if somebody comes off the street and they just met some hard times and this has been a long 2 or 3 months, maybe longer than that, then they'll come in there and be able to work with agencies that can help them. I mean, there'll be showers in there, so get showered, find you some clothes. What do you need to do to get resume work? Is there a way that we can get you to some training? How can we get you employment, get you into transitional housing? Like that's what that one-stop shop is. Because right now, the agencies are spread out so far that if you go one place and you need some help and you don't have a vehicle and you don't have a bike, and you gotta walk 2 miles to the other agency to get something else, that's really not fair. So our goal with that was to bring all the resources into one space. Agencies may be there 1 or 2 days a week, so you might stay there a couple days and get to one agency, but everything should be there to help a person get back on their feet. Ms. Patton.
I just want to make a comment. People are not homeless just because they want to be. They're not on drugs just because they want to be. And I ride the bus with them every day, every morning. The men at the Union Rescue Mission, they have to get on the bus. They have everything that they own, backpacks or rolling bags or whatever they can transport. I work at the library. They live down there. I have a picture of a person that has spread all their belongings out and they have no dignity. When you have a shelter, you're more able to address some of these issues that keep you on the street. And I really hope that this is gonna be a 24/7, 365 facility, because March 31st, their predicament didn't end. there's no heat contingency. So they're all out on the street, you know, yeah, there is the drug use, the robbery and this and that and the other. But these are human beings, you know,
Yes.
they have a right to dignity. And I had a young man ask me what time it was, and he had to be somewhere like at 9 o'clock. And he literally came over and just thanked me for giving him the time.
No,
So, you know, like I said, it's not just the winter issue. And I think it's wonderful that they will have all these resources in one place where they can, you know, we can start addressing it.
Yeah.
And then that should be a priority, all around the country. It's worse, you know, but, there should be a tiny house revolution going on right here.
so the goal is for that to be 24/7, 365, 366 on leap year. So it will be a year round thing. We just gotta get it built up and running.
Well, thank you for keeping your words, because you told us it wasn't gonna be permanent, and I said, you sure? He said, I'm sure. So, but when you talk about that. At the multi-agency center, I have a friend that lives right next door to that school. And my question is, where they have it, are they gonna have like patrolling to make sure that whoever uses that, whoever aren't camped out all around the perimeter? Are they gonna be able to patrol and make sure people aren't, you know, camping out there? Because it's in a neighborhood that those people there didn't want it either. And the people on the west side didn't want it, so I'm just wondering if they're gonna be able, at least do that much to make sure you can at least walk down the sidewalk without tripping over.
I do believe there will be security on site. I don't think it will be actually WWPD, but I think one key point is Vice Mayor and others have been directly engaging with the neighborhood to try to address some of those concerns. Lighting will be a little bit different as well. There'll be pretty much everything they need inside, so the hope is that they do come inside. But also, I don't see that neighborhood changing much more than when Humankind operated the shelter a block and a half away. So it's kind of the same thing. And driving through there in the winter, I never saw a whole lot. You know, staff was really engaged. I expect that to be the same thing at Park. Since that is District 6, I don't have all of the information. I just have a pretty high level debrief on that, but I think designs are being made. City manager told me about some lighting elements that will be there that will not only look cool, but also be like a safety thing, so everyone knows what's going on. But the community will be engaged going forward.
And then the walk paths on the west side of Water, they already camp out there. I mean, you probably already. They don't have.
Not much, not a whole lot to do. I know the Supreme Court gave us some more powers. I don't really think that we should be out there messing with folks unless we actually have somewhere to take them that's beneficial.
I agree, but I bet you wouldn't want them in your backyard, can you?
Well, I live next to some homeless folks.
Okay.
I may not necessarily want to
You don't
see
want it, you don't want
someone
it.
struggling like that all the time without being able to get them the resources, but our goal is to make sure we have a space for them to get that. And again, like I didn't necessarily, it was a tough decision on Opportunity Drive, it's tough over there, but folks have to go somewhere, and the farther away you put up the resources, the more difficult it is to actually help. And all the resources are down in that area.
So you kind of ventured into the curve in the road that I wanted to ask you about. What is the city's policy on like tent camping within the city or congregation of people that pick a place and suddenly you have a tent city that pops out? That
So
sometimes they're hard to see, but you'll drive by and it's like, what? Oh my Lord. You know, and it's like, wow, when did that start? And what's the city's policy on that? And if you have to move them, then what are you doing? Because you can't just tear it down and say, go someplace else. Well, I mean, they can, but that's not the humane thing to do. I mean, the humanity of it has to
to kick in there to where you can't, like you said, everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. But there's also that, how, when it starts potentially being an unsafe situation, both for those people and those that are in the surrounding area.
Yeah, I can't say our policy has changed since the Supreme Court decision. I can say that I know that the hot team normally goes in with whatever resources they can in a tenant area. So there was one down, south of, 135 in District 3, over by the drive-in kind of. And, I know Councilmember Hoheisel actually went there 4 times himself with members of the hot team and just trying to find ways to get resources to people that they need. Talked about the dangers of some of the fires they were starting to keep warm. And then after that, there was even some encouragement from the folks who were living there, keeping that area clean as well, keeping trash in one area.
Because the one that I saw was in District 1, I believe, because it was up.
There was a couple up there.
It was off of Hillside and south of 96,
Yeah, over there by Glendale Park.
down in the ravine.
There's 3 of them over there that I know about. Oftentimes we just try to get them resources.
Okay.
From the council members I've talked to, as well as Officer Nate, the goal is always how can we help you, not necessarily just run you out of somewhere.
Correct.
And I think when the MAC comes, we may see a little bit of maybe an increase because we want people to know that there's this resource center here. But also we have to build trust. Some of the folks who are in the house don't trust any of those systems or being in there or any of those spaces. So it's a lot of work we'll have to do, but my hope is that we just continue to get people into those resources.
Will this, on the MAC Center, will the type of security that is gonna work there, will they have any kind of training? What kind of training will they have as far as evidence-based or empathetic training?
We hope all of that. I don't have an answer for you right now on that. Our biggest focus has really been trying to get everything built.
Right.
But I think on the operations side, as we figure that out, I'm sure you'll see evidence-based, you'll see compassion, you'll see how can we de-escalate, it's like our.
De-escalate, yes, thank you.
De-escalation,
Yeah.
you'll see all of that.
All that. So I would hope that this, whatever security is gonna be there, will have that kind of education on how to relate to people in different walks of life, coming from different situations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And last year, with the emergency center, shelter, I was at Menard and they had a whole bunch of stuff that was marked way down, hats and gloves. And so I just picked up everything that they had, bagged it, went down there. Well, first I called and Humankind said, yes, go ahead and take it down there. And literally I was met with, not exactly kindness from the security people.
Yeah.
They said, you cannot bring that stuff down here. You can't give it to anybody. You gotta get off the property. And it was like, I'm standing there in a group of a bunch of men that are like going, that was so kind of you. Thank you for doing it. But I couldn't hand anything to anybody. And I was told, you give anything to these guys, somebody will kill somebody in the middle of the night for it. It's like, whoa, then there's a big problem in the way that that shelter is being run. If that, I mean, that, because if you have a new place and you got people that are there because it's an emergency shelter, then to not be able to give them anything to help them to keep warm because it's too risky. At the center, there's got to be something else, another layer that has to be there.
I don't believe that will happen at this center. We are all publicly saying we need help. So if any security guard were to do that, please let me know.
Okay.
But we're asking for help from everyone in the community, the religious sector, private sector. I believe the managers kind of said, we think we can figure out operations the first year or two, but we need private sector help. And there's been a lot of businesses that have complained. And the response is, well, now we have a solution. So how can you support that?
Okay.
But we need help from everyone on that. So if you do get turned away, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to press a little bit and ask you about the petitions for dirt roads. how does one get a petition going? And how do you determine 80% of a community or neighborhood where there is one?
I will follow up with you on that because that changed at the bench.
Oh,
So that wasn't a process worked out. Council members led that. So I know that we have a petition now that's meant for property owners. I'm pretty sure that may just shift into the residents that are there.
and part of the reason there are dirt roads because there are no properties on like 22nd Street, west the hillside to like Erie. There's a dirt road and there's no houses on that street. And I think that's one of the reasons it's a dirt road because you can't, you know, assess any tax. But yesterday, some big vehicle had gone through the dirt and then they strode it all the way down to the paved street right in front of where I live. So you got all this dirt, you know, that have been shrugged, but you know, it's a problem area. It's muddy. But anyway, I just wanted to know how one go about petitioning for that.
Yeah, once we get that process worked out, I'll
Okay.
let you know. We'll talk about it at first.
Okay.
Everyone's favorite topic right now, parking. I'll give a little, I'm sure you may have questions, comments, thoughts. So there's a parking plan. A lot of the headlines that you read said we are making everybody downtown pay for parking. And there's actually just the parking plan implementation. Some people have been frustrated with me by asking the question, have you read the plan? Not necessarily assume that we're making you pay for parking. But if you read the plan and it talks about what's in downtown right now, the reality of downtown right now is that the majority of that parking is paid, but it's paid by somebody else. So if you go park in Old Town, you feel like you have free parking. It's not free. Those businesses are paying for it. And the question is, will that change? A lot of people are wondering, will that change? If you go in Delano, there's places where those businesses are paying for parking. So when you get out, you're not doing a meter, you're not doing an app, but they're paying for parking now. When you look at the timed parking, you don't pay for that, but if you stay longer than the time limit, you might pay a ticket. But we don't enforce right now because we have one enforcement person. So a lot of people feel like downtown is free parking. And then we have those meters where if you're somebody like me and you don't have coins and you don't have dollars, and they don't take dollars anyway, what do? They don't have an app. I would use an app. Not everybody uses an app. So the parking plan truly is a modernization of parking downtown. So the machines that you see now that only take coin, those would be replaced. They may not all go in the same space because we're also negotiating with some of those business and property owners. But where you see a machine that takes coin, it may take coin, cash, and an app. There's a modernization there. There's a cost to that. The timed parking that you see now when we made our deal with Car Park would actually be enforced. So if you're excited that you went to 1 hour parking and you get to stay there for 3 hours with no ticket, you get a ticket. It'll be enforced. That's just like if we hired more people to actually enforce it. So a lot of that is having that discussion. There are some businesses that are paying rates that truly should not be paying that low. They should be paying more. I know that that's concerning to some business owners, but that's why we want to talk to them. That's where this discussion is supposed to come from, and engagement. Now, a lot of folks are fearful that we're gonna charge $20 an hour to park. It's not true. The number that we floated starts off at 75 cents an hour. Most of those machines downtown are between a quarter and maybe 50 cents on the high end. Some of them you can get like 15 minutes for a nickel, 30 minutes for a dime. Those rates would go up, we were talking about 75 cents. There was concerns about surge pricing around events. I'll tell you right now, you go down to the baseball stadium on game day, try to park where the ice center's at, what are you paying? $5. That might be considered surge pricing. These things are happening now. And the question is, how do we implement a plan that's fair to everyone, that keeps some of what we have, that modernizes what we have, and then increases enforcement? And yes, there's some payments, but the thing that also is in the plan that talks about is we have more than 1 million visitors downtown every year. That's money that we will be making to make sure that our infrastructure is good, whether it's our parking garages, making sure our equipment's good. There were concerns about the investment that looks like we're giving Car Park $12 million. There's a lot of investment in equipment because we have to modernize all the things that we have. We have to make those changes. If you want to know what Car Park's like, go to Century 2 today. Car Park runs that. If you visit City Hall today, Car Park runs that. Some of the questions about free parking and time, if you go to City Hall right now, your first 30 minutes is free. But that's a paid parking lot, right? There's also gonna be times that maybe it's paid up until 6 p.m. After 6 p.m., they may be free. There may be weekends that are free. We talked about the farmer's market during that time frame, it could be free. So we're still having that conversation on what that could look like. My hope is that as we continue to talk, whether you like the plan or not, really look at it in the realistic terms of what happens today, already, right now, and where that plan is going. And if you have traveled, what did you experience? I went to Lawrence last month and I parked in front of a meter, but it was 6:30 and the pavement stopped at 6, so it was free parking. So again, those are conversations we're having right now. And some people don't like the fact that I tell you to read a 111-page plan. That is a lot of reading. But it's just because there's more information in there and we can have the discussion on what that truly looks like. It's not saying that every space that you feel is free right now or that some business is paying for is gonna switch to a meter on everything. That's not what we're doing. That's not what we've talked about. And I know it sounds like that, but that's not the case. So that conversation continues to happen. Tuesday, the council's gonna have an update on the meetings that we had and what we heard from people. There will be no action. I know that for a while they said there would be some action on Tuesday. There's not. It's just a report and a conversation about what's been said so far and what that looks like. We'll probably kind of go back over that plan as well and some minor details, but today I just wanted to make sure we start on the same, what downtown looks like right now and where we may go. This truly is just a modernization of that and what's coming downtown. The question for the public is, if you truly want the council to say no to this, then when do we get into managing our parking? Do we wait on the Biomed Center to bring 3,000 people down there? Do we wait on the other developments that are coming in the pipeline to happen? Or does it make sense to get on the front end of these larger developments, come up with a plan that can be modified? It's not permanent. We can change rates in this new digital plan. We can change where these meters go. We can change where the timed parking is at. Do we want to do that now before all of that happens? Because it's cheaper now. Or do we want to do it later and pay more? And that question is for you all. Because if the public just overwhelmingly says, we know the plan, we don't like the plan, no, I don't think that's the right way to go. But council members may end up voting it down, right? And then later on, we gotta pay for it. What's gonna happen? Because I'll tell you, one of the voices that are not being heard, if we say no, is the businesses. We know Wichita is still a driving town. Most of us, when we want to go somewhere, where do we want to park? Right by the business. If we want to get a coffee, we want to park, take 3 steps, get our coffee, get back in our vehicle. If we're shopping, we may take 10 steps. So some of the business owners who I've actually heard from, because it wasn't just a social media debate you all may have seen, is I don't like somebody parking in front of my business all day. So how can we enforce that? And that would be the time parking if there's no meter there. It could be a meter or time parking, but how does that get enforced so my customers can come into my business more frequently and they don't have to walk as far? That voice isn't really being uplifted in this conversation. Now, I don't mind walking a little distance, but those are the things that we really have to talk about, and that's where parking management comes from. A lot of the discussion has been around the pay piece, but the larger discussion is management. Management around events, management around the day-to-day, and the businesses that are there. So I just wanted to lay that foundation. And again, I know not everybody may agree with that, but I just want to make sure all that information is out there for a discussion or for thoughts if you don't want to have a discussion today. So, parking.
Well, first of all, my experience of parking at City Hall using the car park has not been the best. It's gotten better lately to get out. It's gotten a little easier, but it hasn't been a good experience in general. Well, the city council, I'm concerned about how much of the authority to make changes and increase rates and all of that is gonna be with Car Park. And that the city council, I mean, first of all, you don't have time to micromanage all the parking. But I'm sure it's a for-profit company. And I wanna know what breaks and are gonna be on them exploiting different events that you all may not have input on. So is the Car Park agreement easy to find where, you know, citizens who are interested can read it? Cause I'm real concerned about that. Once you guys sign off to them, that it could become its own beast. And a lot of that is gonna be in the, you know, in the contract.
I will ask that specific thing Tuesday. That contract was approved last summer. I don't remember the date. But that green sheet packet information should be there so you can read the contract.
Yeah.
Based on the public discussion already, I know that our assistant city manager, Troy Anderson, has already kind of been talking with Car Park. So there could be some potential amendments, but I'll ask that question. I would assume that we will be getting regular reports. When I say regular, probably quarterly, from them, but I can ask for that too. And then, as rates increase, that's something I'm sure they will let the council know, because we'll hear about it. Car Park may or may not, but like we'll be the ones to hear about it. I can see where we would have some thought. But even with, switching to another area, we heard about rate increases there. It wasn't, the golf board of directors do it, so they talked to us about the proposed increases. And they had talked to the users of the golf players and all of that, so I would see that system being the same, that we would hear that before they actually did it.
Oh, by the way, this is fantastic. Have I been missing these every week, this whole document? That was over here, I don't know, weekly talking points, communication update. It's over here on the table.
They're all gone. Yeah, I just printed it up. It goes out. I did the district.
Yeah. No, but these are great to have, but you send them out?
Yeah.
each week,
And
this whole thing?
in the newsletter. Well, the newsletter is bi-weekly. So get it every-
But I could start adding it in.
Oh my gosh, this is so helpful, because sometimes I go to city council and I don't know what's gonna happen.
That's why I say Cameron does all the real work. I just put stuff in them.
This is fantastic.
Do you have more copies?
Yeah.
Has there been 3 evening meetings so far? Council's 3? Is there
Yes.
one left?
We got-
How is the council, what is their thoughts or opinion on the 3 meetings turnout so far?
It's better every time.
Good.
The first one,
Yeah.
I went along with it because it's access, but I had told the mayor when she first told me that last year's budget meeting had an attendance of 17.
Yeah.
And I think half of those were for Cowtown.
Yes.
And so I said, I hope we see more than that. I don't mind doing more evening meetings. But hopefully we get more engagement. So our first one, can't remember all my numbers. I think our first evening meeting had 52, so I was surprised.
Yes.
Our next one was close to that, and our last one, the budget, probably saw closer to 70 or so. And not everybody spoke,
Right.
which is what I really want to see, but it was cool to have that many people there. So I think this is something we'll keep up. We were doing a quarterly evening meeting as a pilot this year to see if we wanted to continue, but I don't see a reason why we wouldn't now, because turnout continues to be better.
And there were a few of us online,
Hmm?
quite a few of us.
Well, yeah, the online numbers are real high. I think the last one, it was 117 online.
Okay.
So one thing, that not everybody knows is when we're up there, so we have computers in front of our seat. Half of us actually look at the YouTube. So there's, we'll see how many people are watching. Sometimes we ask questions that come from YouTube. So if you ever are on there online and you have a question, sometimes we'll see that and ask it. Councilmember Zoe, I did it last meeting. Sometimes I do that as well. Great question. The next one, I don't have the next one today. I'll make sure we talk about that.
Thank you.
So, as you know, I think the parking plan is great. The written parking plan, the 111-page document, makes a lot of sense. I have not gotten the feeling that it's been talked about by the city in the way that it's presented in the actual written plan. And in fact, it, you know, from the talk, it doesn't even sound like they're thinking of it quite the way that it's articulated in the written plan. But they're looking at it, their emphasis seems to have been on raising as much money as possible through the plan, which I understand the need for the money. But I don't think that that's really the emphasis of the plan. The emphasis, as you say, is more on the management of the parking and making sense of it. So I
Maybe
think
some
it's
marketing.
a bit of a self-inflicted harm,
Injury.
you know, in terms of the way that it's been presented and thought of. But if you get back to the actual plan itself, I think it makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, that's my hope. I know that, I know for us, one of the main things we saw is all the needed upgrades coming and how much that's gonna cost. And I think that's where that focus was, especially the parking garages, those are millions of dollars of needs. But to your point, and that's kind of what I've been saying internally is just, you know, how can we have a conversation about the plan and do that? I know a couple of the early meetings, a lot of it was just responding to the people talking about the paid piece. And that, yeah, not everybody likes how I do things, but I like to stay focused on what this plan is. And even if folks are upset about the paid piece, let's talk about all of it. I'll take all the fees, but you know, let's really get that out there for the conversational piece. Because I've had some people who've reached out furious about it. And then I talk through like, this is what the plan is. These are different page numbers we can look at. Let's talk in a week. When we talk again, it's like, I get it. I don't necessarily like paying an extra 2 quarters or whatnot, but okay, I get this. And the other piece, I think, is I've been on the council long enough. Part of our gap is this was a 2019 plan and then COVID hit, and then we just kind of didn't talk about it for a while. That's the same thing that happened with Douglas. So just so you all know, the Douglas conversation's coming back, moving that 3 lanes from 5, making it more walkable, bikeable, getting some bike lanes in there. That is coming back. I've been pushing on that. That was something that also was happening in 2019. So it goes from runway, 5 lanes to 3 lanes with the bulb outs and all that. But you'll see that here pretty soon. We'll pick that back up, but that was part of it as well. But hopefully again, with more engagement on that, we can talk through those other elements. Talk about the financial need, of course, but also how this just makes downtown a lot more manageable and better. And one example that I hadn't been at those public meetings. I really like those to be people just giving us feedback, but I changed the time parking on Douglas east of Hillside, between Hillside and I should know the street by now, so I always say it, but where Bora's at. Because those businesses talked about people parking in front of there in the 2-hour parking. That's now 1-hour parking if you drive by, because they wanted to see less folks taking away parking spots for their customers. So if somebody was there, they wanted it to just be an hour, hopefully less, so that their customers can come in there. So I've been hearing the parking stuff for a while, but we also have this plan, and that's why I always talk to people about just keeping an open mind about all of it. Because whereas a business may say they don't want to pay that or they don't want their employees paying for parking, there's also the element of managing the parking that's in front of those businesses too.
So on your park, when you're speaking about the parking, when you brought it up and the way you presented it just now, if you could do that to the news, because that's not what I heard on the news, that was, I understood what you said, how you said it. Could you do something, you know, marketing like that to the news?
2 parts on that. The news will never do that because it's 10 seconds, 20 seconds. And because I've had this conversation with a few stations, they slip what makes sense with what they're saying. But we have been talking about doing more city marketing on that, the conversation.
Sure, yeah.
So Troy talking about some things, me talking about some things, and depending on how Tuesday goes, I may host a larger town hall somewhere downtown to just talk through the actual elements of the plan, get people's feedback, thumbs up, thumbs down on the different pieces. But I like to know holistically where we are and what we're thinking. That helps me get to a point of what is a good compromise, or is this just terrible and do we need to do away with it? But from all the engagement that we had over the years, I think it's a good plan, but we just need to engage more with people and make sure, you know, every piece of it, that things can be negotiated, and that it's not final just yet.
What about the traffic congestion on Douglas? If you go from 5 to 3 lanes?
So the goal is making that more walkable and bikeable. So right now, the speed limit is, I think, 35. The average speed that we clocked was somewhere around 42. So when you do that, it's kind of a road diet, so people will continue through. You won't see a lot of stopping.
And then you got East High right there.
We're working with 259 on that and the businesses across the street to try to find a solution, because right now those buses are dangerous and they take up one lane of traffic. And I actually just had a meeting 2 weeks ago over there with the businesses and the principal at East about students to kind of pop out in the street. So part of that plan, again, this isn't final, but what we talked about on the Douglas plan, because that's not the farthest east point, but that's a significant point, is can we talk to 259 about pushing those buses back into their property, maybe to the sidewalk, which takes those buses off of the lanes of the street. It makes it safer for them over there, because food trucks are a problem too.
Yeah.
And then we have our lane going. So we're talking through that as well. I didn't make it sound as good as what the engineers did, but essentially you'd have a bus lane right there in front of the school. So it doesn't make the kids jumping out in front of in the street.
They used to have the bus lane with on the east side of East off Grove. They used to have years ago, long time, but then they went to the.
Yeah, I don't know why that change happened. It's probably easier staying on that arterial. Because if you go the road, you gotta make a bunch of turns to get back, but that's a conversation. Again, that's not final yet. We started that conversation in 2018, 19. Again, it stopped with the pandemic. I've talked to our city engineer and director of public works about that. Talked to, I think, just about every business owner over there about some of their issues they're having. And then the principal's been really engaged as well.
Yeah, but what works in theory doesn't always work in practice.
Keep looking at it.
Can we have that conversation at Robinson and Adams?
Oh, yeah.
We should.
They shut down the road.
Yeah, they do. And then we had to issue last year, the year before, the students just running across the street, so they had their staff out there, but we should. I think I have to look in the CIP and see when that road project is coming up, but I think it's something always to talk about.
All right, okay, wait. When is the Love supposed to open?
The what?
Love's truck stop.
Soon, the sign says soon.
I don't know what date on that, but it should be open soon.
Did they test that ground over there, or did they even know about the contamination before that deal was struck?
Where Love's is at? Yeah. So ICT 21 that owns all of that had to work with the EPA on getting all of that stuff tested. There's EPA guidelines on construction that they had to meet. Something else. I can't remember the other piece, but yeah, they should have tested all that.
Will any of that money trickle into District 1, or will it all go to District 5?
I hope it does. So the thing with, so when I've met with ICT 21 representation, they've always said their hope is they build businesses and that right across the highway, we have some food or retail or whatnot for those folks to use. So we started that conversation when Tops was still open. And it was like, oh, everybody's gonna leave work and go to Tops, but then Tops closed. And then I think they're supposed to have Arby's in there. I can't remember what sign is out there. But the goal was always to have the different businesses in District 1, hopefully to get the traffic from the folks that work over there. We just haven't opened those businesses. Because that empty lot adjacent to the highway in Northeast Bel-Air, I forgot who owned that lot. I think it's changed hands, but when we were talking, he had almost considered potentially like trying to get that developed for like just some business to help us out, create those jobs. It just hasn't happened just yet. So hopefully we see some more investment over there since that's coming, so people can have businesses to help us out. But this hasn't happened yet. All right. Are there any other questions before I get to this one?
So actually, this one does actually involve the public transit and the parking situation that I want to clarify people's anxieties about the paid expenses here. And it goes back into the idea of gentrification. How much of the city is going to be accessible to poor people. So when we think about access to the city, there are certain limitations for a lot of poor people, particularly when it comes to, say, coming to the city to pay fines, to be able to court situation. There's a lot of nickel and diming of poor people in the space as it relates to private property. So when we think about the anxiety, it's not just the payment thing, it's really the all these paywalls and how it limits access to the space around the city. So don't get upset that they're mad about money, get aware that they're talking about how do we maintain our mobility and how do we maintain access to this public space, even though there's more and more charges. It's kind of a similar thing to the way we do our criminal justice system, where we have a lot of little fines that end up really hankering down on poor people because of the nature of that economy. But before we really think about accessibility to poor people, it's not, because I agree, parking needs managed, obviously. But accessibility is the bigger conversation, I think, that their anxiety is expressing. Because, we're also at the same time, we're having a conversation, closing down schools, closing down parks, selling off property, giving it to this, giving it to that, worrying about more of the business perspective rather than the customers and clientele of the whole effect. Because poor people spend money too, but we are limited by the amount of mobility. So thinking about doing paid parking, we should probably think about more like queue line situations where we're able to bring them in and take them out without congesting because there's just not cars there, right?
So, good point. One clarification, I'm not upset, I just encourage the conversations. The queue line is actually subsidized by the private sector, so we would need more private sector investment on that as well. As we talked about earlier, the sales tax conversation, I have said that if we did a sales tax, a portion of it should go to city transit because, as you all know, transit stops at 6 p.m.
Someone said they had extended their hours, but I wasn't sure about that.
It's only Route 21.
Yeah,
Oh, what
Route
kind of
21,
transit?
and then there's some around paratransit. We need to go to at least second shift.
Right.
So cost wise, just so everybody knows, and this is an old quote from our former director, Mike Tan, we went to a grid system in Wichita. We need at least 75 buses. Every bus is $1 million. Then we'll need at least probably 80 or so drivers just to make sure in case somebody gets sick, and then you got the supervisors and all of that.
What is the pay for those drivers?
It's not enough.
I know, that's why I'm asking.
I think they got a bump to, I might be wrong on this, but at 1742 stands out. It might be 1742, but the challenge as we've been working on this, so that's one of my goals. I don't know if we'll get to it by the time I do leave office, but when you look at the 1742 per student was paying their drivers, I think 22 an hour.
Oh.
Now, people have been leaving because our benefits are better and the environment's a little better, but we have to catch up to that. That's why I keep saying when I talk about raising the mill levy, I'm literally not saying just to grow government. It's just being real, that we gotta compete with that. That's tough.
Is the city mill levy different than the county, or is it the one and the same?
It's different.
Different, okay.
Because ours comes to our general fund, and the county will go to theirs.
Okay.
And I don't know.
They're talking about it also.
Yeah, well, they lowered theirs. And they proposed, I don't wanna get too detailed, because I didn't fully read what they said, but it sounded like they wanted to do a sales tax to offset more property tax.
Right.
Where I'm saying we need to increase the mill levy to at least maintain service levels or improve for us. So it's a little different argument.
Okay.
But also to some of the comments around the criminal justice system. So Dante kind of mentioned this, but we've been working pretty hard about some reforms in municipal court, trying to take away just paying fines on community service, increase the amount paid for community service. The WARP program really is just a start. One of the larger things that I've been working on, and I hope to get that sometime next spring, is do anybody remember the Amnesty Day we had in 2016?
Yeah.
So my goal is to get back to that and expand it. That was amazing, but that was just one day that we were talking about downtown, people lined up at the courthouse. There was some money given by some donor, an anonymous donor. I think maybe 2,000 people lined up and only 700 people were able to benefit before the money ran out. And that was just one type of amnesty. So what I have been suggesting, and hopefully work can be a part of it, not only for one day, but ongoing, is not only amnesty around traffic tickets, but amnesty around child support, amnesty around, any other fines we may have. And by amnesty, we mean not only do you owe us money, but if you got a $75 ticket in whatever year and you now owe $3,000, we would wipe all of that down to $75 and you just pay the 75 and be good. So that interest, we don't need to charge people that type of interest. So we are working towards that.
Plus, then they have to pay another hundreds of dollars to get their license reinstated.
Yeah, working on trying to get all of that together. Hopefully we can get some funds for that, and I can figure out who the private donor was so we can have a little chat. But the other part though, legally, I have to go look and see if this changed, because I've been talking with some folks in the state legislature about, so your reinstatement fee is $95, but I think that's $95 or not reinstatement, expungement fee is either $95 or $195 and it's per charge.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it gets really expensive. And I would hope that that could be reduced to just one fee. And if we have just one fee, maybe we get some donors to help out with that, so people can get everything fixed in a timely manner.
Does this cover felonies?
Some felonies can't be expired. And that's a challenge too. The other thing though, I mean, the city was on the leading edge, 2014, 15 with Coke Industries on, banning the box, but I think the challenge is there's a lot of folks who believe in the America we grow to believe that make a mistake, pay your debt to society, you get a second chance, and that's not true. There's so many businesses that you made a mistake, that's on you for life, they won't give you a chance, you won't get the pay that you need, you get treated differently. We gotta do something different about that. I mean, the last thing I was gonna talk about today was housing, that happens in housing so much. Hopefully, I know I keep talking about it, I've been talking about it all year, hopefully we see those ordinances come up here pretty soon. But I have had probably 11 people in the last 3 weeks reach out to me with pictures of black mold. One of them has a 5-month-old who went to the hospital with this nasty cough that hoping it's just a cough and they get better and it's not something that becomes fatal. But we have to do more about housing standards here. And it's always folks who have some type of challenge on their background, or folks that get stuck. And then the other challenge, and it'll be an interesting conversation, but you know, as much as we like free market's not helping right now. So if you are poor and you live at, because I talk about them all the time, and you live at Emory Gardens out south, and you pay $950 a month for your apartment, and you want to move, even if you are a 2-income apartment, like the couple I met, you pay $950 a month, you find an apartment somewhere else that's maybe $875, so you know you can pay it, but you can't get in because why? Maybe your credit score is too low. And now you have to pay a massive deposit, or they want you to make 3 or 4 times the amount of rent, and you don't make that. You make enough to pay rent, but you don't make that. So now it doesn't qualify you to be there. We've got to make those changes. And I don't believe we have the authority as a city, and hopefully the legislature cares enough. I don't think that will happen, but those are the problems right now. So when you look at the market, people will say, we're just telling them to move. They can't. They literally can't move unless somebody gives them a large sum of money to get into that space. And even then, if they don't make 3 and 4 times the rent, they can't move in. That's a lot of apartments in Wichita right now. That's a lot of Lou McGinnis apartments. He's in the KMUW, so I don't care about saying his name. He's responsible for 1/3 of the evictions in Sedgwick County. All his properties, 1/3. Lou McGinnis. He has eucalyptus property management out of Oklahoma. They won't talk to me anymore. And I forget the other company, but he owns all of those. He wants his money. He doesn't care about how you live. And per state law, you have to pay rent. So if you're covered in bed bugs and roaches and mice and all of that, you gotta pay rent. You have to pay that $950.
He's not doing anything about the problems.
No, he doesn't care. And I say that, you know, based on action, like he literally does not recall, we've given him examples, we've talked about. And he hides behind his property management, but they don't care. Matter of fact, somebody that called me and we talked to them, they evicted them like next week. That was before we had our retaliatory eviction work. So luckily we got that, but we'll have all of those things coming up here pretty soon. It will be a fight. There are people who don't want to see it happen. There are people who've already kind of told me they'll be loud about it. I don't care.
Would you comment on the new laws aimed to crack down on nuisance rental?
So essentially that was kind of aimed at party houses. So if you have a short-term rental and you were warned by WPD that this was gonna be a party for a minor. If you were told by neighbors that this would be a party for minors, like they saw it on social media, or you had some indication and knew, you could be fined for allowing that to happen in your short-term rental. If you get enough of those, we could look at taking your license for the short-term rental. The challenge with that though, I said it at the bench, was how many neighbors are friends with the people throwing these parties, right? Like, I'm friends with a bunch of different people on social media. So when we were talking through it, like I saw some parents talking about, yeah, I'm gonna get a Airbnb for the weekend and throw my kids a party. And kids being kids, some of them do things that probably shouldn't be doing. And I saw that, but does the neighbor next to that see that on social media, and can they tell the actual owner? When you get in the spaces of a person has just a company that owns several, how do you prove that they knew about it? Are they gonna see this online? Are neighbors just monitoring social media all day, every day for parties? Like, there's a lot of difficulty to actually making that work. There may be some, but that was the issue. One of the things that sparked a lot of that though was in Crown Heights, the house where that murder happened. There have been several parties there. And some of the neighbors just felt like that person didn't care. And then we kind of started to see that, like, this is a great party location. We can rent it out for $50. They can do what they want. That becomes an issue in neighborhoods as well. So that was what we did. Law enforcement probably will monitor social media a little better than that, but again, given the fact that we don't have enough officers right now, are they really gonna look at social media all day and then go knock on the door or call somebody and say, hey, your house is gonna be used for a party, or are they gonna be out dealing with the other issues going on in the community? So it'll be tough to see, but you know, I voted for it because it was a step in the direction that people wanted, but it's gonna be difficult to really enforce that, I think.
Thank you. The restrictions on the water, city water, can you give us an update on that? I know what I heard recently on the news and what the meeting said, but what's your take on it?
I'm concerned. This Cheney continues to drop. We don't get enough rain.
And the rain we're getting, none of it's going to change.
Yeah. Well, so the problem, that was the thing, I used to joke about this until my nerd side kicked in. It doesn't matter how much rain we get in Wichita. It has to rain in the Cheney Basin.
Right,
If
right.
it don't rain out there, this don't matter.
It's not
Yeah.
raining out there.
And they're down, what, 7 feet? It's bad. So the restrictions, I think, are good. We've seen some good results.
Right,
from
from the
a
number.
significant drop in usage.
Yeah.
I've been telling our comms team, we just need to keep that up. I recently visited the Grand Canyon and they have to live like that. And I think if we start that conversation now, make it where we have to, we can preserve that water longer. Water is gonna be a real challenge going into the next several decades. So I think we should conserve as much as possible. Honestly, if we weren't in stage 2, I intended to reseed my whole yard with native grasses. When we moved in, it was fescue and stuff, but if we could get that, I like lines in my yard that don't have to be green all the time. Just that or drinking water, I'd rather have drinking water. So, a lot of that though, I hope that we continue. I've talked to our comms team about come spring. Normally in spring, when it rains and everything's green, people forget about that. I'm just hoping to keep that front and center. Because even if Cheney gets back up to 85, 90%, we still need to have the mentality of conservation. So it's not an issue. I need to go back and look at our plan. We do have rebates on irrigation systems with the gauges in it. So like if it rains, it won't cut on. That stuff's kind of expensive. public shame is always good. If it's raining and you go by a gas station, and sprinklers are on, what are y'all doing? I did that a couple times, like, guys, we're in a drought.
The Sonic,
Sonic does.
the water's still going in the street, you know.
So we have that. We do rebates for rain barrels. So if you can collect water and use that at home like that, that's hopefully the way we can really get to doing it. If we start thinking like a Phoenix, Arizona, we really train ourselves and we can keep our water resources for quite some time. But we gotta get to that.
Well, the other side of that, because we had a speaker a couple of months ago talked about, you know, growing the city, bringing in new businesses that will increase the need for water. Are we looking at a third water source for the city?
I have not been in any conversation like that, that I would say is serious. Outside of the Equus and Cheney, at some point when we started the conversation around our water treatment plant, somebody, it wasn't city staff, somebody brought up El Dorado. That's just so far, and El Dorado Lake is dry. I mean, I'm going out there, I'm seeing trees I've never seen before. Hopefully we get enough rain for the ASR to keep the groundwater high, and let's find a way to not use all of it. We'll have an item coming up to council here pretty soon related to not about what we're gonna do with our current treatment plant once it goes offline and its capacity and some of the options we're looking at, solely using it for groundwater in cases of emergency. But if we can't get more rain out in the Cheney Basin, I don't know what's gonna happen, because if that gets to a point where we can't use it, and I know it sounds bad, but that's probably a couple decades down the road, but what are we gonna do with the Equus beds? And then when you get into Equus beds, you start talking about water rights. If you wanna see people fight, I went to the governor's water conference in 2014. I didn't know what a water right was, and I didn't understand Western Kansas, and oh my goodness. The yelling that I heard, you know, we had this, my family had this for generations, you can only use down to this level.
It's big money.
It is.
Water rights are
Yep.
huge money out in Western Kansas.
Well, how would that RV park impact our water situation?
Oh, the low truck stop? I mean, so the water restrictions really is outside. It's not the usage on the inside, washing clothes and all that stuff. Now, if we get a few more stages down, that may happen. I've tried not to scare myself. I've only looked at stage 2. I have not looked at stage 3, 4, or 5. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm sure once you start getting that low, there might be some restrictions on actual usage in general. But right now, it's just trying to tell people it's okay to have a dead yard, like for millennia it's happened. I love the green yard with all my lines in it, but at this point, it's not working.
So how is it being reported for the numbers? Is it still just people reporting other people? How is the city finding out who's using more and not, and who's using less?
So it's based on your average winter consumption, and we have all of that information. That's what the water meter's for, so we can tell how much you're using in the summer versus the winter. We can also look at how much you used last summer versus right now. And if numbers are going up, you're not following the restrictions. The numbers are going down, you're following it. And some neighbors have reported.
Right.
It's happening more in East and West Wichita, I think.
And last month, was it Troy that was here that was talking about it? That, I just lost my train of thought, sorry.
Troy was here, I think, in July. But he said he'd come back. Everybody heard that. I told him
Yeah, I told him to come back too. What was I gonna ask? Something he said about the water and I just lost it, sorry.
Well, she's thinking, so we might see a minimal decrease in our bills?
If you use less water, yes.
We'll see.
So, this is along the subject line. Has anybody thought of implementing some kind of a program where you could get a rebate, like they do a rebate if on your sprinkler system, if you have a rain gauge and it keeps it from watering? Okay. I have pots. I don't water my yard, but I have a few pots. and I've got rain barrels. But I have a pitcher that I keep in my kitchen sink. And when I start to wash dishes or something, I just start filling that pitcher, and it's gallons and gallons of water to get that water hot in order to use the dishwasher or in order to wash dishes. And then I just take that and go out and water my flowers with it. Otherwise, it's just flushing right down the drain. So if you have like a recirculating pump, like a whole house recirculating pump, but that's not an inexpensive thing. It's not terrible, but it's not an inexpensive thing. There are things like that that you can also do, not just cutting the use outside, but how we manage the use inside, or gray water systems or things like that. And a lot of people, they just, it's too expensive.
Yeah.
But there are other options to help us with the conservation of what's going on inside your house, and not just like watering or not watering your lawn.
I agree. I think we should be thinking about all of that. I'll take that back. That was kind of when I mentioned like, or when I was in the Grand Canyon, I took a picture of what they had up there. I talked about some of that too. So I think we should be talking about that. There's one thing, I know super unpopular, but I hope y'all think about it going forward. This did come up. It's not being proposed right now with the current treatment plant, but what does it look like to recycle water? Can you use that? And when I say recycle, I mean wastewater that comes out. It does get treated to be drinkable. It's just everybody thinks about what was in it beforehand. But if we get to a point where Cheney is that low, I'm gonna, when this does come up, say that I think this plant should have some way to do that. Now, it'd be expensive to get water back to it, but you gotta think about that, because there are some cities that do it. And we may not be there now, but if we're thinking forward to, we may need to, that's something we gotta keep in mind. And I think staff calls it the ick factor.
I remember now, sorry, excuse me. Troy said, I asked him, there was no difference in inside water versus outside water. Control of it, or can't tell which is which. It's just that your bill goes up or down, right? Okay. And then a couple months back, they were talking about they needed more funding or money for the new water plant that's built. What's the status on that?
We approved it. It was something that, again, that's why I kind of, when I was meeting with, I'm talking to two different documenters now, and I just kind of paused most of the time, just so much. But so when we actually did this plant, if you remember some of the controversy around it. So we went from design, build, operate to design, build. When we switched to operate off, that's when we knew we'd have to pay this money. We assumed it would be a little less than what we ended up paying, but we knew it then. And we talked about it, but we didn't need to talk about it again until it came up, because we had to get the plant built. So that was the operation piece, or a portion of it that council changed. And again, council changed that in the process. We were gonna get a recommendation for design, build, operate. And a majority of the council at the time voted to switch that to design, build. The theory behind it was right. We didn't need to have both working on it, so those are local jobs, but it changed a few things. And then when things change like that, we don't always bring it back up every meeting until we actually need to get to that point. So that was an operational fee transitioning our staff from the current plant to the new one, which I think we're gonna do a ribbon cut in here pretty soon on that. But transitioning there, and then operations for, I believe, a year or two on that. But it was something we knew was coming. Again, can't help how things are reported, but we knew that part was coming.
Thank you.
So on water, when Troy was here, he mentioned that, because we talked about all the car washes and that they recycle maybe 60% of their water. And I said, do you have a way to make sure in the future they continue to do that? And he said he didn't. So anything like you can do, and my guess is that's not limited, like recycling water used by a company isn't limited to just car washes. And perhaps it is, but maybe the city could put something in place where they can go out and hold these organizations accountable to maintaining that. It seems like kind of a no-brainer, but I know there's a cost involved. And then you mentioned the communications department, and maybe they could start a contest or something. But like the lady who uses, puts a pitcher in to capture her water. I use a bucket to capture water in the shower while it's getting hot, and I use it to water my plants. And then actually it catches water while I'm still showering because it's only watering my plants. But I mean, there's ways. and
I
if we
flush
would-
my toilet with it.
Okay, well, yeah, there you go. I mean, something to use it, right? So if we could share those, folks smarter than me will come up with probably really great ideas.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, if they could do that.
I'll take it back to them.
While you're writing that, I hate that Dante left. Of course, this is the same thing I bring up all the damn time. But I think it was January when the city manager was here and said he was working on measurements for the police department. You know, I haven't seen what those are. I've asked multiple times that there's community engagement because what I want measured and what you want measured might be something different. And like, where the heck are we on that? And then when these measurements are available, it would be helpful. And it's like, it's something I could subscribe to. I'm interested, you may not be, but that these quarterly measurements are sent out to the folks who are interested. You mentioned, you know, that information on litigation was shared with the Citizens Review Board. I was there. Citizens Review Board doesn't get much attention. It's hard to find things on their minutes. And you know, just because it was compiled once and sent, to me, that doesn't check the box of being transparent and available to folks who need it. So I don't know what you can do to help build a fire under folks to get those measurements and let us as a community, all over the community, give input, things that we want to see. I'm interested in a lot of things, but one of them is high-speed chases. You know, those have been fatal here. And how often does it happen? How often are our citizens at risk? And is it really as critical? Or is it, you know, there's, I don't know, that somebody's, maybe
Is there a
adrenaline
bomb
is a
on the
little
bus?
high. Yeah.
Yeah, on the high-speed chases, we have been talking about that for a while. I have to go back and look at the last version of policy, but one of the things I said, I've even said it to Sullivan, he didn't say no to me, but we've invested so much in Flock now. If an officer can figure out that license plate, make and model of the vehicle, they have to chase it. We can monitor through Flock where that person goes. I think some of that happens now. We don't have a whole lot of high-speed chases, or at least I'm not told about a lot of
Yeah,
them.
I think you might be surprised. And when I was on CRB, I saw some things that was so freaking disturbing.
It depends on the definition. So when we were talking, when Ramsey was here, the definition of a high-speed chase that either was brought to him or that he was using was an officer initiating lights, starting, and even if they stopped within like 2 seconds, that was considered a high-speed chase, even though they weren't chasing. So I think we needed all the same definition and then to look at what that is. One of the chases I think that resulted in the accident was that officer started and then was like, this isn't good, and pulled back, but that person continued speeding and then got into an accident.
And maybe there's different degrees, you know, the one that lasted 2 seconds versus the one that went across town for 2 minutes or 5 minutes. You know, the more measurements, the better. People pay attention to what's measured, meaning not just the community, but the officers who know this stuff is measured and their name's tied to it. It has a profound effect on the folks that are being measured.
New equipment that they are getting, that when they tap the lights, that camera comes on, there'll be names and stuff on it.
Yeah, but we need to know, you know, and we need to know people are looking at it. Just having data is great, but unless it's being analyzed and results shared, it's just data and it means nothing.
You keep making this offer and you retire, you might do a job.
I could come back to work or something. I sure would. I love that.
The city houses, are there, is there a set, allotted amount for individual homeowners, that could possibly purchase these houses, you know, I know you got Habitat and the private developer, but what about the individual that would like to buy a house? And would there be any resources to help them rehab those houses?
I believe, we are. I believe that, that 40,000 per house was open to anybody who applied, so you have to go through a RFP process. It wasn't a traditional bank. But you could use that towards the house at that point.
Okay.
And Tuesday, some of the houses in, Northeast Malaire are up for a vote. I think 33 of them. I have to go back and look exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, but the goal was to get individuals to buy those homes. I was a little skeptical of the average person, maybe low income person getting that because those houses needed a lot of work. And if I'm fighting for more quality housing, and I knew my vote for the RAD program was to strip all those houses down to the bones and then rebuild them because they needed that. So I've been hesitant on some people being able to get into that house and then they don't have the money to fix it the way it
So
should.
that's what I'm saying, that's one of the barriers to being a homeowner, there needs to be some.
But that 40,000 isn't enough.
Okay, I can't afford it, but if there was like, kind of like the HUD program, I had some plumbing done and it was like, if I stayed in the house X amount of years, maybe it'd be a zero interest loan or something like that.
So we have that is, we talked about that here at the breakfast, and that program is actually kind of shifting a bit based on the conversation we had. So it used to be $5,000 forgivable, now it's 25,000, the first 5 is forgivable. But there's some restrictions that stay with that, on that house and income level. And then if you go through the housing fund, there's that $40,000 available on the house that you buy, right? I don't know if you could tie those together, but even so, that's not enough money. Like to really redo one of those houses, you need about $95,000, which again, average low income person, that's not gonna work for them. But those are all HUD things that we have to work through.
Okay.
So, most of everybody has left, so, our next breakfast in October is the 5th. We don't have a guest just yet, but we will work that out and let you all know, same time, same place, same food. Hope to see y'all here.
Have you seen that eyesore down there on 16th Road? It's a house with a trailer in the back and it's horrible. On the east side of the street. And then my neighbor, I'm showing you a video I took this morning.
Just so that we're on the record. So we're on the record.
See how.
Okay, and if not, then our protest will continue on forward. Thank you for any reason and I'll be using that as evidence to further prosecute you for your treasonous behavior.
Oh, yeah.
See you around, coward.
And I just heard that. Oh, wow, thank you. How are you doing? Good.
Yeah.
I gotta see that on the 16th. I see this. See that. I'm going too fast right here and get the answers.
Non-traditional. And then the next one. Aaron.
Yeah.
They said
Well, it says,
And it's that same stretch. And so,
Brandon Johnson has been seen.
Oh, okay. You're right.
Well.
If you want to, great, but if not, don't.
So.
This is the demand. Anywhere I see.
Where they.
I'll let you.